This week, we talked to former college quarterback John Warder about his lifestyle of fitness and nutrition. Let's get into it. All righty. Joining us today is John Warder. Am I saying your name right?
Yes. Josh, good. Really good.
Awesome. So I know you're buddies with Dewey, my co-host, who couldn't be here today. Dang, day job's getting in the way. But he thought you would be a great guest for the podcast just because of your enthusiastic pursuit of fitness. And I don't want to say at an advanced age, but that's all relative and all a state of mind, we think. But tell us how old you are, John.
Well, I'm 74 years old, and it was about 5 or 6 years ago that something happened that really, challenged me to get even better than I thought I was. And so I began to do some things that I'd say most 74, actually when I was in my late 60s, people my age just didn't do, kind of endurance runs, or it's really about biking. I've done probably 25 triathlons and so forth.
Wow.
But I've been doing 100-mile bike rides in
Wow.
one day each week of the summer is kind of my normal challenge.
100 miles. So that's not 10 miles a day for 10 days. You're talking in one shot, unbroken, 100 miles.
One shot, I do take some rest, but it takes about 7 hours with some resting in between. I'm probably going only 15 miles an hour average. So, I'm a senior citizen, right?
Yep, you are.
But I'm really challenged about, I have a mother who's 94 and really getting weak and has to use a walker and is falling down. And, that's serious. And when you lose the strength of your legs, which is, the strongest part of our bodies, we start out as babies, very needy, can't walk yet, very vulnerable. And then we end of life is similar to that.
Right.
And it's because of strength or lack of strength.
Yeah.
Studies done.
Oh, I was saying, we always say that strength is longevity or strength is health, right? And you've found that to be true at your age as well.
That's right. And even in my business, I'm a human resource consultant, and I consult my clients around their strengths. The Strengths Finder assessment that's out there by Gallup. So my all of my life is built around this mantra of strength in personal health as well as corporate lifestyle, and how to leverage everybody's strength. Just like you would, I played quarterback. It's just like you would a football team. You're leveraging, trying to put the right people in the right position for the good of the team. And,
right. Let's go back to, you're almost exactly my dad's age. I'm 49. My dad, I think, is 73. My grandma's 96. So we're, right in there. So I can really relate to what you're saying, because my father is not as, let's say, agile as you. And it's funny because, as a 49-year-old, I'm comparing myself to other people my age. And as I go to high school reunions and things like that, the difference becomes more and more apparent. So I'm sure at your age now, when you see other people your age, the amount of frailty you see has got to be kind of scary and something you want to fend off.
That's really good. That's really good observation. I went to my 50th high school reunion a few years ago, and so I did see already some of my classmates were using walkers and canes and had heart attacks, and very frail already. And here we are just, in our 60s. And so I've always been interested in health, but I think these last 5-6 years, I bumped it up, and I've been doing more, let's say, stressful things to challenge me to get stronger if I can. You start losing muscle as you age. So how do we preserve that? How do we increase it if we can?
Yeah.
So
we always talk about, I don't know if you've heard the stat, but I think it's something like 10 to 12% of your muscle mass every decade, if you don't do something about it, will be reduced.
right. And there's studies out there where if elderly people would do some light weights and stuff, they would get stronger and not have the need for their canes and walkers. Now I know there's some exceptions to that, but that's the idea. We're losing strength, and so we're weaker. It's easier to fall down. And there's studies done that when people fall down, just really bad things start happening,
Oh yeah.
breaking their hips and things, and then they're in a walker, and now they're atrophying more and trying to rehab and get back to normal if you can. I don't know. It's a very sad state. So there's two things that concern me. One is strength, but also pain.
Mm.
So as you get older, you get some arthritis or whatever, and other kinds of pain. So those are of interest to me in my own reading and challenging myself. And then I've just been using Facebook to post to my boomer friends
Yes.
about what I'm learning and growing in. So
Let me ask you that. Like, how do other people your age respond? Because I mean, you're kind of a living example that this is possible. Do they typically have the attitude of, well, it's not possible for me, or that's too hard, or what's kind of been the reaction?
I get a lot of kudos of people saying, "Oh, you're so inspiring," but to know what it's doing for them, I'd say I don't know if I'm influencing anybody to change, any big percentage. It's got to be, in the just a few percentage points of
Yeah.
my boomer friends that I'm influencing to change. It's one thing to say, "Oh, John's really amazing. He's our inspiration," but then you have to do something.
Right.
Am I
Like to
really
follow up.
inspiring you to do something?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think being an
that's
example is that's the best thing you can do, regardless, because if you weren't and then you were trying to convince them what they should be doing, that's going to be even less effective. So I think the only shot you have is by living it and being an example that they can see and try to emulate.
Josh. They usually say, "Oh, I couldn't do what you're doing." I say, "Well, you're right, because I've been working at it.
Right.
But what could you do? How about riding just the first 10 miles or 5 miles or something, or get walking, on a consistent
Exactly.
basis?"
Yep. Yeah. Well, I
Um,
mean, you're not going to be able to bench press 500 pounds, but can you do one push up? Can you do 10 push ups and increasing and getting stronger and stronger? That's all the goal is. We're not judging you by the number you can do. It's
that, that's
progress.
that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do what you can and then build on that. This summer, I've been doing something to try to emulate that. I've been riding on the first week. I rode 100 miles plus one, so
Mm,
101.
okay.
Then so I'm up to yes, actually yesterday or 2 days ago I did a little more. I did 112
Wow.
miles,
Wow.
and I posted about how 112 miles is what they use in the Ironman triathlon,
Oh, wow.
um, with with a 26.2 mile run
Wow.
and a 2.4 mile swim. So that's someone said, "You're our Ironman." I said, "Well, I'm a third of an Ironman. I
Right.
can do I
Yeah.
can do 112."
Let's go back to the beginning. So when you were a youngster, tell me about how was nutrition viewed in your family, or was it even considered? Like my father, who is basically your exact age, grew up on a farm, and they just had
Wow.
meat and potatoes, and
Yeah.
buns and
Great
corn and
lifestyle.
coleslaw, and just the standard Midwestern fare. And nutrition wasn't even thought of, an afterthought. Even it was just, well, you eat what's here, and you worked on the farm, and I mean, but everybody was thin back then. That's one thing that we highlight a lot is when you show pictures of the beach back in the 60s and 50s and 60s, everybody was lean compared to
Yes.
now. And now if you see a picture of a beach, if you find a lean person, they're like a unicorn. So tell me
I
about how
know
you were
it was
raised and what.
so terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. But how were you raised,
I
and what was your views on nutrition growing up?
Well, it was, the standard American diet. We were pretty much a cereal in the morning. I would take two bologna sandwiches to school, and in Fritos and an apple. So there was something.
Yep.
But it was not oriented to let's say a good healthy lifestyle. My wife, on the other hand, much like your father, grew up on a farm. and felt like she was organic most of her life.
Yeah.
She
Before they
she
even knew what
even
that
milked the
was.
cow.
Right.
And so when we got married, we were interested in being healthy, and we started reading a lot of that. We got our first jobs were out in L.A. from Iowa State, and so we ran into some health gurus out there,
Yeah.
and started learning how to eat. We even knew, this is 1970. We even visited or did grocery shopping at Trader Joe's.
Oh, the actual, like the original spot.
Yeah, it's one of the original spots. Who would think that that could blow up? Like Whole Foods and some of the others.
So when you
But
were you
when we had
lean? Were you lean back then? Obviously in your
yes,
playing days and
so right, I was still coming off of being healthy from playing football, and I was around 195 to 200 pounds, and have pretty much stayed that way. When we started having kids, it was tough to have them eat. Well, I mean, we weren't even that interested in a real keto lifestyle yet, but
well, you didn't even know what that was.
no,
I
no,
mean,
that word.
I only heard
That's
that word for the first time maybe a decade ago. So
that's
in
right.
1970, there
Yeah,
was no version of that even. So
right.
what were the big what were the health food diets of the day when you were first interested?
Um, let's see. Um, I remember there was some milkshake drinks that you could take.
Oh, like
Um,
almost like a today's equivalent of a protein shake kind of thing.
right, right, and you just drank a few of those and maybe reduced your carbs
So that
type
was
thing.
really a caloric restriction just by only
Yeah,
drinking the shakes.
and yeah, you put me on the spot there. I
Well, I'm
can't
just
think of
wondering, like,
any of them.
because vegan wasn't really a thing yet. I mean, there
Right.
was vegetarians, and then there was kind of the standard American diet, and I don't know what the version of eating healthy was. And I think just because of the lack of processed foods back then, compared to what there is now, and people just ate more, whole foods. I think they were just naturally a lot leaner.
Right,
And one thing I was going to ask you too was because you were around and you were an adult actually when the food pyramid was developed.
right.
So do you
Yeah,
remember anything about having that being introduced or how that was pushed out to the masses, with all the grains being
you're right.
your
Yeah,
main amount of calories they want you to consume a day?
that's right. That was so popular, and it's amazing how that thing has been challenged greatly
Oh yeah.
by almost turning it upside down, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah, except for the sugar and stuff. I mean, you could almost flip it.
right, there's that to me are the two big things I've learned probably in the last 20 years is if people would just eliminate as much as possible refined sugar and refined flour,
Mm.
their health would just really perk up in so many ways. But that's tough now. Everything's got some of that in it. It's just you really got to go with a whole food, fruits, vegetables, good meat, and
Mm-hmm.
we eat a lot of chicken,
Yep.
and just really tried to be simple. My wife doesn't prefer to cook very much, so she really likes making very simple things. Steam the vegetables a little bit or eat them raw with some chicken. There's our dinner, and we've really tried to stay away from desserts, sweets. Eating things at night has
Yeah.
really
Oh
been
yeah.
a challenge.
Yep.
When you watch some TV or whatever. I love, now, oh my gosh, football and fall football is just, it's glorious.
Yep.
Um,
Well, I was going to ask
and
you about in your playing days, not to just kind of hop all around here, but uh, what was the standard kind of training routine when you were an athlete in high school and college? Was it all weightlifting, resistance training mostly?
we did no weightlifting
Whoa,
in
really?
high school or college. It
Even as a
hadn't
football
hit yet.
player?
What was the big icon was the University of Nebraska in our conference, the Big 8 conference, had their own weight room. And we were all, afraid of Nebraska because they were getting stronger than us. We did that isometric thing as a habit,
And that's where
as a,
you're just kind of clenching your muscles and
yeah,
just tensing them up. Is that
static stress, and then the normal push-ups, sit-ups type thing.
so? No
Um,
bench press, no squats, no deadlifts, none of that, even as a college football player.
No,
Wow.
that was mid to late 60s.
Okay.
So I know that began to change, probably in the 70s. But now it's like every Iowa State's got El Primo equipment and the biggest weight room I've ever seen for college. Of course, I haven't seen that many
Well,
of
we
them, but it
always say
looks
that,
looks very professional.
football is a meritocracy, right? So if you're not, I mean, it's all played out on the field, and if you're not strong enough, you're going to get beat. So whatever works gets utilized,
Oh
and
yeah,
obviously they
and
figured that out.
now it's not to say that we didn't work out hard, and we used to even do wrestling with each other.
Mm.
Iowa State's known for the wrestling, and
Yes,
so we would let's have the football players wrestle each
I think
other.
pound for pound, the strongest athletes are wrestlers.
I think you're right.
Those
Now,
guys
when
go
I went to
hard.
Iowa State, I don't know if you know this name, maybe you do. Dan Gable was
Yes.
wrestling the
Yep.
same time I was, and
Famous.
then of
Yeah.
course he became, great wrestling coach. Can't believe he got away from Iowa State, but
Right.
that's what can happen.
Yeah, when I was in high school in the late '80s, one of my buddies was a wrestler, and I attended a couple of their practices,
Oh,
and there was guys throwing up. I mean, they were going hard, way harder than the other sports that I had witnessed. So I think
yes,
those guys are pound for
yes.
pound the strongest for sure. But yeah,
Oh boy,
but they had definitely by that point had incorporated weightlifting
right. I mean, even
big time.
I've got a daughter, a granddaughter, that's on in Minnesota. The dance lines for young girls, young women are really popular. There's state championships for high kick dance lines. They're lifting weights with a regular weight coach in the weight room, and
Wow.
that's amazing. So yeah, getting stronger is powerful, and so here we are encouraging being stronger in those early years, and then when you get out on your own, some of the habits we all pick up where we don't do as much activity, and we start getting a little heavier, a little heavier. We got a belly now,
Mm-hmm.
and you really get comfortable, and you say, "Well, I don't know if I could ever get rid of this belly." So,
Yeah.
sad to
Oh,
say, my brother
yeah.
is that way, and he's never been able to get rid of his. Though I don't think he drinks beer, but he has a beer belly.
Right. Well,
Sorry, Bob, if you're listening.
that's all right.
But
Yeah,
but
it's funny because my father, like I said, is your age. His brother and his sister, they're all three of them are either pre-diabetic or diabetic too.
wow,
So
wow,
and that's something in recent years we're realizing you can pretty much reverse or at least eliminate the need for medications. If it's type 2 diabetes that's brought on by lifestyle. Have you seen
yeah.
any evidence of that, or
I
what's your own
I've
experience
never
been?
had that, but you're right. I love that. I go to a chiropractor that put on the screen the word inflammation, and then on his PowerPoint slide, he was putting all these diseases were popping up. I said, all these diseases are caused by inflammation. He said, yes, pretty much everything is.
Right.
And
Now he
that's
was
the
in
big.
that, not to interrupt, but just to kind of tag that a little bit. So were some of the diseases you saw, the diabetes, heart disease, was
Yeah,
Alzheimer's on there? Because
yeah,
they're
fibromyalgia,
oh yeah,
fibromyalgia.
rheumatoid
Um,
arthritis.
just about, yeah,
Yep.
everything we name that we think is common that is advertised with a drug or a pill or something on TV. It's all inflammation, and therefore, if we can reduce inflammation, we can see somewhat reversal of some of these diseases. Is what these doctors are saying. So I know my remember the Biggest Loser show that was on
Yes.
TV.
Yes.
So I love that halfway through they've lost maybe 50, 75 pounds now, and they get to have a doctor's appointment. The doctor says, "Hey, you don't need your medicines anymore. You don't have diabetes."
Yeah. That's crazy. And we used to
And
think that that was chronic and irreversible.
yes, I have friends that their doctors have never told them that they could reverse it,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's very
sad. And then,
sad.
and well, like my uncle, not to use him as a bad example, but he honestly said he would rather keep eating his nibs and take the insulin than stop. And that's, to me, it's very sad. I mean, and that is fine until you start having to have toes chopped off, and other ill effects mentally and all the other things that come along with diabetes. Why wouldn't you want to reverse that is my point. But
Yes.
Yeah, it's sad.
Was it in that keto podcast that you guys did? Because I was riding my bike then, and I was amazed. Was it that where you talked about how that doctor was it Tim Noakes that was cutting people's feet off?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, it was South African doctor, and you said you've listened to a lot of his stuff. Well, actually, what was happening was over the course of, I think, a couple decades of practice, he went from chopping like a couple feet off a year due to diabetes to like almost one a week or one every couple of days, and he just said this is insane. We have to figure out a way to try to stop this, and that's
I
what led
know.
him down the rabbit hole, and eventually to carb restriction, I think, in, the early versions of keto or low carb, high fat kind of eating. And, you're probably more familiar with this story, but yeah, I just thought that was a crazy anecdote. Here's somebody who's witnessing this and having to perform this horrible surgery and wanting to do something about it. And then for his efforts, he gets persecuted.
Right. Well, he had diabetes himself and was able to reverse it just because of eating right. And then all of his running buddies, because they were marathoners, started having similar diabetic experiences, and he began to help them. And I know some of the videos I've watched of him was him helping other athletic teams,
Right.
like soccer and cricket and
Yeah. All those other
amazing.
weird
That
international sports.
yeah, just and then he had the whole court case that
Yes.
I think it was over 5 days or something, and I would love to have been there. That would have been so cool, and just for somebody to stand up like that and reverse the whole culture's view of nutrition and health is amazing. But we're so far down the hole here.
Well, I think people think that it's, like I said, it's always chronic and irreversible, and they don't realize that that's not true. That if you reduce your weight, basically, because I mean, the single biggest metric is the waistline to height ratio, right? If you can get that down, if you have to measure one thing, that's like the single biggest metric, and that all comes down to what you're putting in your mouth, basically.
That's really good, and things like we've been learning things about intermittent fasting.
Yeah, I was going to
And
ask you
even
that so let's kind of walk back the timeline here. So you're in your adult life, you're eating healthier, trying to maintain a lean physique. When did you first hear the term keto or low carb, or was it, for me, it was Atkins. That's when I first heard of anything of having to do with carb restriction.
Yes. So Atkins, I remember people having very good experiences with it, and they could eat all the meat they wanted to.
Yeah. And then it got completely demonized, seen as kind of a extreme
Well,
way of
so it was
eating.
about 6 years ago that a friend of mine came over and he put a packet of like a whey protein packet on my counter. And he said, the Navy SEALs are using this, John. I thought you might be interested. I said, I want it. What is it? He said, well, this is a ketone supplement. And I said, well, what's going on with does it give you energy? He says, yes, it gives you energy. But the Navy SEALs were having brain seizures in their underwater missions with the breathing tanks that are closed circuit.
Oh, right.
And so they don't want bubbles, right? So they can be stealth.
Mm.
But they were over oxygenating the brain cells. And so this scientist, in fact, Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss and all those guys, I listen to all those guys.
Yep.
On our bike ride, they've interviewed this guy. His name's Dr. D'Agostino. And he was doing research on ketone supplementation. And so he made the first supplement drink, if you will, put it in powdered form, just like you can have creatine in powder, you can have vitamin C in powder, you can have ketones in powder. So he made the first supplement for them to overcome brain seizures.
Wow.
And he's got a TED talk on it and everything.
So, yeah, and just for those that don't know, like ketones are something that your brain, and this is my elementary understanding of it, but something that your brain likes to run on when you're not necessarily putting a bunch of glucose in your body and running off glucose. If you're kind of like what they call fat adapted, and you're in ketosis, then your body is producing these ketones, and they work well for brain function.
Right.
That's my understanding. So, and that's kind of what the being in nutritional ketosis is kind of what the keto diet is referencing. If you're in that state where your body's generating those ketones and burning fat instead of glucose. So how did you kind of adopt the keto diet as your main way of eating then, or?
Well, slowly. But no, what this allowed you to do was to be in ketosis in 30 to 60 minutes by drinking it.
Mm.
And so I don't know if you don't want to name the company.
No, go ahead.
That's inappropriate.
Go ahead.
So the company's called Prove It, Pruvit.
Okay.
And so they got rights to the formula that the Navy SEALs had, and they began to promote that as a consumer product back in 2015.
Gotcha.
So that was really the game changer for me. I started drinking this stuff, and the first thing I did was I did 30 spinning classes, with a stationary bike. Went to a class at my health club, 5:30 in the morning. I did 30 sessions in a row, one a day for 30 days.
Right.
And that's where I got this thing about challenging myself.
Right.
Because I was having trouble with my feet, but biking didn't hurt my joints or my feet very. So anyway, so that's what I began to do is saw a difference of the energy level I had. And, but then we slowly began to adopt a low carb type lifestyle and learning about it. And this has really been revolutionary for us.
And who are you following? I know you said Tim Noakes, and was that kind of your main introduction to the low carb?
I'd say that's when I started listening to Tim Noakes.
Okay.
And other guys like that.
Did you ever hear of Gary Taubes? Did you get into him at all?
Yes.
That was my first introduction after I heard Atkins. Then I got Good Calories, Bad Calories, which came out in, I think, 2009. And I found it in 2011. And that was my gateway into the whole carb restriction kind of way of thinking.
The two inventors of this, so the Prove It product has gone through, let's say, 5 generations of upgrading them, so that they like to say that they're the first to the market, the consumer market of a ketone supplement. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of copycats out there now.
Right.
You can see it on Amazon. And then they try to keep making this product better and better by either adding little nutritional things or upgrading the quality of the ketones. For instance, now they're manufactured using a fermentation process. Mm. I don't know much about that, but much like kombucha and apple cider vinegar, and has this fermentation process that apparently this allows for a lot of the impurities to be eliminated, and so we can say that 100% of the ketones in this product are absorbable by the cells.
Right.
So that's really how I've gotten into more of a keto. I think I say I like the term. I'm a keto carnivore.
Right. That's kind of I call myself animal based, and I'm holding up the air quotes because it's not like I'm not 100% strict carnivore. I say the same thing. I'm kind of animal based, and throw in some vegetables. I just typically don't enjoy vegetables that much, but to me, like having a ribeye with a salad, it's pretty hard to go wrong.
Right. And there's a way to there's even the term modified keto diet I'm on. I think even the guy that is the Dr. D'Agostino would say he's under, let's say 50 carbs, more moderate
per day
keto. And so, just trying to learn about it more, and I'm amazed at what people's transformation happens when they do this. I've had friends, lose 100 pounds now. My neighbor behind me has lost 100 using a keto approach.
If you're coming off of a standard American diet and you're fairly overweight and you go straight to a keto type approach, I mean, the pounds just melt off, don't they?
Yeah. I've never had that experience because, I've never been that heavy. Mm-hmm. I got about 20 pounds more than I was now about 10 years ago. But so I'm still able to maintain my college playing weight.
Wow.
And that's really satisfying to me and encouraging to me that I'm able to, because it's a challenge. I can let myself go on a weekend and
Oh
put on
yeah.
a few pounds like any of us.
But you know how to get back on track.
And you just have to, yeah, get back on the bike and start pedaling again.
Well, you brought up fasting, so let's talk about that. That's a tool that I use quite a bit, and I've
Oh,
done both versions. Kind of longer. I try to do like a 48-hour fast, maybe once a month, and then I do OMAD. One meal a day is my typical way of eating anyway. So I'm always in some version of intermittent fasting.
that's very impressive.
Oh,
Yes.
it's actually I thought it was going to be way harder than it was because I remember when I was on the standard American diet and I would eat, cereal or yogurt or something for breakfast, I would be starving, gnaw my hands off by 11, before lunch. And then I would eat lunch and then I would be starving before supper. So the thought of going 48 hours was insane. But having done it, I mean, you cross that threshold where you're just not that hungry anymore. And then you kind of, you once you get into that ketosis type state, then your energy level goes up. You start feeling really good. And, I joke that it's, you achieve a higher level of spiritual creaminess, and so I think that it's not actually that hard once if people would just try it. So do you do currently, or have you, in the past, do you adopt either intermittent fasting or one meal a day or time restricted feeding into your approach?
Right. We've tried several ways, and even this company called Prove It has come out with a 60-hour fasting concept where we start Sunday night and it ends Wednesday morning. And they give us a box of ketone packets and some other little nutritional things.
Is there
Some
electrolytes?
electrolytes,
Yep.
and in a sense, we just drink this ketone supplement through the 2.5 days as a way to, because it does curb your cravings.
That and water, right?
Yes, and water and the electrolytes. And so um, they, they there's a whole following in this group of prove it-ites, if you will,
Right.
who are members that really value this. It's really helped them, change them to a better way of life for them.
How about when you're
So
not
I
doing like the 60-hour? Do you just your normal everyday way of eating? Do you typically eat how many meals a day, and what's your kind of timing on that?
No, you don't eat anything.
No, I mean when you're not doing that 60-hour,
Oh,
like just a
so
regular outside of that.
regular diet. So I usually drink this ketone supplement first thing in the morning. So that just kind of brightens my brain, and some people say, well, it's eliminated my brain fog and things like that. So
Hmm.
there's these other benefits of drinking this ketone supplement. But I'd say then we eat typically lunch around noon or one, based on when I get back home. I normally make another a protein shake. I make a protein shake rather than having a sandwich or something,
Hmm.
and put in another ketone packet, and that sets me up really well for the afternoon. And then for supper, we're kind of the lean and green kind of lifestyle.
Sure. Okay. So really that is kind of intermittent fasting because then you're not eating from supper time until lunch the next day. So it's kind of like an 18-hour window other than the supplement and water.
That's right. That's been easy for us to manage, at least for
Yeah.
myself, to manage that way.
And
No,
I think if people would try that, skipping just one of the 3 meals a day is not that difficult,
right.
especially
And
if you're eating foods that are satiating.
there's some science around. I was listening to who Peter Attia is.
Yeah. Yep.
So I like listening to some of the people he interviews, and I don't know whether it was him. It might have been Joe Rogan interviewed a guy talking about anti-aging,
Hmm.
and one of the there's like 5 things to promote a younger you, and one of them is better sleep. That whole theme, and the other one was restricted calories,
Caloric
or
restriction. Yep.
going to that one meal lifestyle.
Yeah.
That when they do that with rats, the rats are much more vibrant, much more active
Right.
than the fat rats, and it just makes sense. But so that's the interesting thing to me, is how can I keep, let's say, a level of higher performance of doing these bike rides or any kind of exercise at my age, and yet I know a lot of elderly people. My mom does not, eat enough calories, I don't think,
Right.
to maintain her health. So that little disparity is intriguing to me about um, that the science is there that says when we restrict calories, we actually are healthier. The
Hmm.
body is able to perform at a higher, more higher performance than when we just load up.
And I think some of that is because, well, number one, if you have excess body fat, then your body has a store of energy to utilize. So that's once you get down to a level of leanness, then fasting, I think, is less effective. So if your mother maybe doesn't have the body fat of somebody who's more obese, that's tougher too. Plus, then also the quality of food that they're eating. I remember my grandma used to drink coffee and eat graham crackers, and that would be, well, that's lunch, and now
Oh,
I realize how horrific that was. If she
yes,
would have eaten some chicken or some tuna or some ribeye or something, that would have been so much more beneficial. She wouldn't have to necessarily eat a ton of it, but graham crackers are not doing anything for you positively, except for enhancing that inflammation that is at the root of all these diseases that your chiropractor pointed out.
wow, that's yeah. What a sad state of affairs we've gotten ourselves in,
Yep.
and yeah,
So tell me about your. Um, we've talked about nutrition quite a bit. So other than the insane 100-mile bike rides, well, now 112, do you do resistance training? Do you uh, do any sort of, with the goal of like building lean muscle?
right. That's the other side of me is to do 2 or 3 days a week of lifting. Um, all the big muscle groups. I'm just so again, it's the emphasis on strength. Um,
Tell me about a typical routine. Like, let's take a day. How long is your workouts, and what types of actual, exercises are you doing?
right. So I usually warm up on all the machine type things where you've got the pulleys and levers to do bench, curls, squats, kind of warming up my whole body. And then I'll get into, using the barbells to do some squats or the other kinds of dumbbells for biceps, triceps kind of thing. So it's really trying to do an overall workout within an hour, about three times a week. It's
Now,
been
when you're doing these sets, let's say you're doing bicep curls, are you going to failure? Are you like really pushing it, or are you just kind of do them so you can do nice controlled form and not pushing too hard? Like, is that worry you at all as far as injury, or how
yeah.
hard are
That's
you
why
going?
I really try to warm up well with the non weights,
Right.
the the non free weights. Um, so I don't typically go to failure each time, but probably once a week, I'll try to use one of those exercises and push my biceps to a new level of weights, especially on the kind that has the pulleys in the back.
Yep.
I don't feel yeah, I don't want to get hurt either and push it too much. But I am trying to. That again is the challenge of my life at this age is to challenge myself to go a little bit farther to see if I can get stronger. So that's the goal, is to keep getting stronger. And
And just for our audience that that doesn't maybe know, but the only way to build lean muscle mass is if you push your muscles to the point where they break down, and they have to adapt to that stimulus. So like if you keep lifting the same 20-pound dumbbells for years, you won't build muscle. You have to keep going a little harder than you did before.
right, yeah, the stress on the muscle is what really tears it down, but then it grows back stronger. That's
Hmm.
right. That's a great principle of life, to do a little bit more. And so that's why I was doing my one more mile
Right.
each week.
That's
And
awesome.
it's not much, but it adds up. And now here I am at 112. I've actually done a 200-mile bike ride in one day as the best thing that I've ever done. And I did it totally drinking this ketone supplement. I did not have any carbs or other
Just
sugar
fasted.
or fruit. It's an amazing thing that I experienced. And I was tired, but
Of course.
I didn't allow my my butt to get in shape for that. So I was totally chafed.
Right.
Had to take days to heal that up down there. And but I was able to do it, and it took me about total time about 16 hours. So I've never done something like that. You can imagine just being outside for 16 hours, you'd be a little tired. But
Yeah.
but that and I haven't done something like that since. I've done 150 miles.
Wow.
So anyway, that's been my little thing to try to challenge myself, and because I know it's not hurting my joints much, and just to be out here, in the winter here in Minnesota, we don't have,
Yeah.
well, in summer, you just try to take advantage of those nice days.
Yeah. It's well, and my little story about progressive overload is when chin ups were always the bane of my existence. I could never do chin ups. And when I started doing this podcast with Dewey and started training, I could do 6. Now I can do 23 as of this morning. I've been adding one
Nice,
chin up about every 2 weeks,
nice,
and
very
that's
good. There
that's
you go.
to like complete failure. The last one I can barely eke it out, but I've been adding one every. So to go from 6 to 23, and I started this was just in January, so it's been about
Wow.
7 months. Of
No,
adding one every couple of weeks. I mean, you can make amazing progress if you just set those goals, and it, like you said, you're adding a mile a week, and it adds up. It's cumulative.
that's a really good example of how you're seeing improvement and growth and strength. Yeah, that's, and they say that, one of the studies, the last 5 weeks, I've been talking about the 5 supplements that John takes to keep himself stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is creatine.
Oh, yeah,
And they've
Dewey's
done
into that too.
studies with elderly people with creatine without lifting weights. They've just taken the supplement of creatine. I don't know what portion or how much, but with elderly people, and they've all been able to measure a degree of increase in strength on
Wow,
all of them.
wow,
And then when they lifted some weights, obviously lighter weights, they got even stronger. And so it just shows how that one supplement. I remember when my son was in high school, he said, "Dad, there's this new supplement out called creatine. You know anything about it?" I said, "Don't have a clue." This is mid '90s,
yep,
and all his coaches were scared to recommend anything. And but wow, I heard last year that $3 billion of creatine was sold.
yeah. Dewey swears by it.
Somebody's taken that.
Oh yeah. Well, Dewey's, he really is an advocate, basically saying it's been used for so many decades that it's been very, very proven safe and effective.
Yes,
So it's pretty.
right, and no penalties for using it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, you think, oh, it's a banned substance or it's a steroid or something. Well, we're on that subject. We've talked about testosterone, low T, those types of things. Have you ever had any dealings with that, or had to get any type of replacement, or because I know testosterone levels can drop as you age
Right.
as well. Any comment on that?
Um, I've read some stuff now just that a lot of people that have gone with a more vegan lifestyle have been able to increase testosterone, and that those of us that tend to load up on meat, are not doing as well. And that's just some of the reading I've done recently, and so that's fascinating to me. I haven't had any problem there
Have you had that?
feeling like I've been having low T.
Have you done any blood work where they measure your range or where you fall on the range?
No, I
Okay.
haven't done that.
But I
I
guess if
should.
there's no need, if you don't have any symptoms, then there's no. That's good. I'd say that would take that as a sign of you're right in the ballpark there, which
Yeah.
is its
Well,
own example of good healthy lifestyle right there, because most aging males have seen a reduction. It's funny, there's a clinic just opened up in town. I'm seeing all kinds of commercials for it that treats all the symptoms that go along with that. So I'm guessing it's becoming a bigger problem in recent years due to our advanced obesity and the aging population.
no, I get it. I get it. I think, yeah, that is a fascinating topic to see all the band-aids that are out there to try to, and all the products that are saying to increase their testosterone level naturally.
Yeah,
So,
most of those are pretty much snake oil, most of the GNC type stuff, or like anything that like a major leaguer probably is promoting, I'm sure he's
oh
just
yeah,
getting a paycheck,
right.
like what's his name, the Big Hurt, Frank,
Yeah,
whatever.
Frank Howard, I think it is.
So yeah, he
Yeah,
advertises one of those products, but yeah, best thing, I mean, in my opinion, best thing you can do is get your waist circumference down, and
yeah,
most of those
boy,
things take
that's
care of
huge.
themselves.
What do you think the circumference is now? Is it like 38 or 40 inches for
Well,
the guys?
what I heard was because everybody obviously of different heights. So really,
Right.
it's a ratio of waist to height. So if you're 60 inches tall, which should be 5 foot tall, then your waist should be 30 or less. So if you're 6 foot tall, which would be 72 inches, then your waist should be 36
36.
or
Okay.
less.
Yeah.
Because that way it allows for some variability due to height. So I forget if it was Ken Berry or Ted Naiman or somebody that kind of proposed that as the kind of the standard. So if you're under that, I mean, many of your risk factors for many of these diseases are reduced greatly.
I
If
know.
you're over that, you're in trouble. And the problem is, you can't see me right now because just the way the technology is. But I'm a pretty lean guy, but I was right on that line, and a little over when we started the podcast. 6 months ago, and you wouldn't look at me and go, "That guy's a fatty." But I was over that line of considered
Oh,
unhealthy.
of that ratio?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
it's much leaner than you probably think it is. And there again, talking about how the population has crept up to be more and more obese over the last few decades. The fact that somebody is still in that obese category or unhealthy category and they don't even look it to you because everyone else is so much more obese, you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of a sad state.
It's really a telltale sign of that problem, of just that weight issue with COVID, that
Oh yeah.
the comorbidities that
Yes.
people have because of, let's say, having increased weight in their life. Now they have diabetes or something else,
Isn't
or
that
a heart
interesting
attack.
how they never ever mention the percentage of people that have had bad outcomes and their existence of comorbidities? If they had, for the last 18 months had pushed people to drop some BMI or,
Yeah.
drop some body fat, we could have all been in a much healthier state and much more naturally resistant to bad outcomes.
It's such a quick fix kind of thing, lifestyle culture that we live in. Just give me a pill or a shot or something, rather than taking care of the total health package, a total healthy view of prevention. Yeah, prevention is not, I've heard that most doctors don't take a nutrition course in their medical training, but chiropractors do. That chiropractors, I heard, have more medical training than MDs do.
As far
That's
as
interesting.
nutrition, yeah. Well, and I always say the only time I want to see a doctor is if I, get hit by a car or if I break my arm or something. Other than that, I don't want to be in there of my own
No,
doing as far as, things that are preventable, like things that are based on your weight and, your nutrition and fitness. You have control over those things. So you should be avoiding the doctor like the plague unless, you break your arm or you need some surgery done.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I need to move forward on something else.
Yeah, this is great. So how can people, you said, where you mostly hang out? Is it on Facebook? Is that, if people were
Yes.
interested
So
in
just
your
John
advice and
John
your coaching?
Warder,
John Warder.
Warder, uh, on Facebook, and that's where I'm doing most of my posting about being healthier, and I'm really directing it at my baby boomers,
Yes.
which would be about mid 50s to now,
Yep.
and so that's been fun to try to be an encouragement. I've had people feel inspired and encouraged to do something. But when I think of how many people I don't know. I don't know how to study that or rate that. I'm just hoping that maybe if I can find a few that would change their lifestyle because it is healthier and there's longevity issues involved, and the whole issue of having a sense of well-being.
Right. Not
A
just
lot of
living
people,
the most
in their
years.
elder years are just are hurting so badly,
Yes.
let alone having a painful disease of some kind.
Mentally as well.
Mentally, wow, the whole issue
Depression.
of the psychology of nutrition, yeah,
Yes.
powerful.
Yeah. I mean, just, the amount of anecdotal stories from people when they're in, adapt a keto type lifestyle, the amount of anxiety that goes away, depression that lifts,
Right.
is pretty inspiring.
It's amazing how food it's what we put in our mouth, like you said.
Hmm.
It all goes down to that, how powerful that can be. And then, so you can just say there's maybe an addiction to the wrong foods, just like there's an addiction to any of these
Well,
illegal drugs or anything. Yeah. Alcohol.
they're literally in laboratories designing these foods to be super, as Gary Taubes calls them, hyper palatable. So they're by definition as addictive as they can possibly make them.
Wow.
And of course, if you were to hand a caveman an Oreo, he'd be addicted to them probably within a few days. But they just never had those as an option before. You had to go out and kill a woolly mammoth or a saber tooth and eat that. But they didn't have even as an option. So I think you do have to resist. And I'll always say that I always have sympathy for people that are addicted to that. I mean, I'm definitely one of those types of people. I mean, it's a daily fight for me.
That's right. It's always a fight. And to know that that's what was intriguing about the keto diet, was because we can eat healthy fats. That has probably been a revelation. That makes eating a good experience too.
Yeah, because fat is so
Yeah.
satiating and makes things taste better.
And we typically don't have enough good fats in our diet, so that's creating a deficiency factor.
Yep, exactly. All right, John, well, I'll let you get going.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share in this.
No, this was great. We love hearing people's stories, and you are an inspiration. I'm going to call my dad and tell him if he doesn't bike 100 miles this weekend, he's lazy.
Well, don't put that on him. Help him to start slowly, small steps,
That's right.
but
All
take
right.
a step.
That's exactly. Just keep moving forward. All right, guys. Well, make sure you send an email to info@fitandfurious if you have questions or topic ideas, or if you want to be on the podcast and tell us your story. We'd love to have you. Make sure you watch on YouTube to check out John's beautiful face and watch valuable visuals every week. We're also anywhere audio podcasts are found. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share. And go to furiousmerch.com for t-shirts and to support the show. We will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye, Josh.